Wherever you are on your road to retirement, we're here to help you stay on course. Welcome to Mason Street Retirement Insights, the show dedicated to helping you plan your financial future.
And I'm Casey Hudson. I am alongside Sean every week here on Mason Street Retirement Insights, asking for his ideas on what you can be working on as you are getting closer to that retirement goal line. We know here in Fresno that you've worked hard, you've saved hard, and now Sean and his team at Mason Street Wealth Management are here to help you turn those savings into a reliable retirement paycheck. Sean, my friend, so great to see you. How are we doing this weekend? What's going on?
I'm doing really good, Casey. It's good to be hanging out with you. I love being with the community. I'm going to tell you what, it's hot. It is hot. So hot here. We're going to head up to the lake. We're going to head up to Shaver Lake tomorrow. Try and do some wakeboarding, but my gosh, keeping it cool has not been easy this weekend.
Don't hurt yourself on the wakeboard, please.
We're going to do our best.
I need you back here in one piece to talk retirement with me. Well, we've got a great show ahead of us today, Sean. I'm very excited. We're going to discuss whether playing it too safe with your retirement savings can actually create some risks of its own. Plus, we'll share some important steps that you can take right now to strengthen your retirement plan, regardless of what happens with Social Security. So we've got some important discussions ahead of us. So go ahead, settle in, get comfy, and grab a pen and paper or grab your phone. Write this number down, 559-847-0039. That's how you can reach us, and we encourage you to go ahead and start dialing right now because Sean has a fantastic opportunity on the table for you today. He has set aside just a few spots on his calendar for your very own complimentary Mason Street Retirement Blueprint. Now, Sean, for somebody listening who has never met with a financial advisor before, sitting down for a retirement blueprint, that might sound a little intimidating or maybe a little scary, but I want you to tell us a little bit about the Mason Street process. What sets it apart and why is it so important for retirees and future retirees to take some time and meet with you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Just, kind of consider the idea that, this retirement thing, it can get a little nervy. The closer we get to retirement, the more real it gets. And, we start thinking about what's really important. And sometimes we've got questions and sometimes we're not real sure. And the goal is to get real confident. The goal is to go into retirement feeling like we have it all figured out. And we can absolutely do that. But when you come into our office to have a discussion, it really helps you get some insight. You can ask questions, you can talk through things. A lot of times people come in, Casey, and they're not sure what to ask. They're not sure. A lot of times people say, look, I don't know what I don't know. Mm-hmm. And, that doesn't make me feel real good. So I'm not saying that you have to be completely prepared with what your thoughts are and what your questions are. Sometimes it's just good to come in and have that discussion. You're going to be left feeling better. So I urge you to do that. Take advantage of it.
Absolutely. If you have $500,000 or more saved for retirement, you can get your very own Mason Street Retirement Blueprint when you dial 559-847-0039. This is your chance to chat directly with a professional who's got years of experience in retirement planning and really get that 30,000-foot view of where you stand and talk through with him what adjustments might make sense for you as you move forward. It's a really amazing opportunity, completely complimentary, no obligation attached, but our space is limited. So that's why we encourage you to go ahead, pick up the phone, give us a call right now. Let's get you scheduled, 559-847-0039, or you can easily get connected with us online as well. We are at MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com. You'll click that contact button, share some info with us, and we'll be more than happy to reach out directly to you and get you started that way. All right, so Sean, I mentioned playing it too safe in retirement. So let's start there today because when we think about retirement risk, most people are immediately thinking about just losing money in the stock market. But sometimes the decisions we're making to avoid risk can kind of create a whole new set of concerns elsewhere. And I think we've got a perfect example of that in our pal Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha himself. He has officially retired at the ripe old age of 95. But before he stepped down as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren moved a lot of money over to cash. We're talking $373 billion with a B dollars. Now, a lot of people, Sean, they do the same thing. They retire from work, they dial back that risk. But my question is, does pulling out of the stock market just kind of create a different type of risk for retirees? Can you talk us through what your thoughts are on this, Sean?
Yeah, I can. And, wow, what an icon, Warren Buffett, right?
Right.
95 years old. Can you imagine? I mean, for us to
Finally
get
calling
to
it quits.
That's amazing. And for us to get to 95 years old, it'd be unbelievable. But then to keep working through 95 years, he's been such a mentor to so many of us in this industry. And so I've really appreciated him through the years. But Berkshire Hathaway, yeah, he put away $380 billion. I think right now, Berkshire Hathaway has about $1.2 trillion in assets, and 320 billion of those are in cash or cash alternatives. But that really what that translates, to put it in perspective, is kind of a 75-25 portfolio. And if you think about that for ourselves, individuals, that's pretty spot on. I mean, that's not a bad mix. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling, though, that the $320 billion going to cash didn't have anything to do with him retiring. Mm-hmm. It's probably more about what he sees in the marketplace. He's made some calls in history in the past that have not necessarily worked out the way he thought they would, but he has made a lot more that have worked out. So we definitely want to take heed of what he says.
Yeah.
Casey, you bring up some good points, and this is a really good concept to be talking about. I would suggest that, the first order of thought is, if somebody is really thinking about or has moved assets to cash and it wasn't in their typical investment plan, the question is why. Get real with exactly why you did that or why you're thinking about doing that, and make sure that you're clear on whether that's emotional. Is it just a gut feeling? Sometimes that works out, most often it doesn't. Or is it more data generated? Do you have some actual reasons that you could explain to yourself and even to your family? Your family's going to be affected by those moves as well. Another piece that I would suggest really walking through is what your goals are, and at what level they are important to you. Is lifestyle going to be more important to you? Is the lifestyle that you live throughout your lifetime and that you provide or help provide for your family, or are short-term market gains more important? A lot of times trying to call the market, sometimes we get a gut feeling and we just want to pull back, but we don't know exactly why we're doing that. We got to make sure we understand what our goals are. Understanding what our goals are a lot of times helps us stay on track with that original investment plan.
I think it's so important, too, for us to remember that every situation is different, and all of our situations are drastically different than Warren Buffett's situation. So just because it made sense for him, that was the move he made, doesn't necessarily mean it makes sense for us. So I'm wondering, Sean, when you're sitting down with clients, let's say you're sitting down with somebody for this Mason Street Retirement Blueprint, how are you helping them determine how much risk is appropriate for their specific situation?
Yeah, that's real. And for sure, we all want to get into Warren's head and figure out why he's doing what he does. But we are so individual, and we have individual goals and the way we feel. I like to talk about risk tolerance in, with two different perspectives. One is that methodical risk tolerance. It's really important that we never set ourselves up to take money out of an account that's gone down. And so understanding how to position risk in your portfolio, every dollar has its own time horizon. We should be dedicating risk to portions of the portfolio based on when we're going to use those dollars in that portion of the portfolio. The other side of it is emotional, and I'll tell you that's just as important because we've got to be able to sleep at night. And so when you really look at the emotional side of risk tolerance, it really means, how far can I watch my portfolio go down and still be able to sleep at night. And that's going to be different for everybody, but it's important to get in tune with that for sure.
Yeah. Do you come across often clients or people that you're meeting with who actually make major investment decisions based on headlines like Warren Buffett moved everything to cash instead of actually what their situation is, what their financial plan tells them?
All the time. It happens all the time. And I'm really fortunate that that's not necessarily the case with the families and individuals that I work with. They understand that they've got to come to me and we've got to have discussions about how they're feeling. It doesn't mean that they don't get a gut feeling, but they know that they need to come and talk it out with me. And typically there's going to be some variation of what they're thinking. Yeah, and there's a lot that goes into it, risk tolerance for sure, but lifestyle. We all are so unique in what we're spending our money on, how much we're spending, when. Income is a strategy, and there's a risk to income strategy. A lot of times people want to spend more in the beginning and less in the later years. Sometimes people are worried about healthcare, long-term healthcare costs, and so they want to be able to fund that. So they hold back a little bit in their earlier retirement years so that they can make sure and fund those things that are important later in life. A lot of times people, legacy is really important to them. So it's so important to determine what is important to you and make sure that you're understanding that and designing how you want that investment strategy to look like.
Absolutely. Can you think of a client you met with maybe recently? Maybe they saw this headline from Warren Buffett and they wanted to move everything to cash. You knew that wasn't the best decision for them, and how you walk them through understanding why that's not the best approach?
Yeah, actually, that's really good. And it was Jim and Nancy, and they just came in, about a week ago. And Nancy started off by letting me know that Jim had decided to make a move and really go very conservative, put a lot of their assets into really short-term guaranteed treasury bonds, cash alternatives. He had told Nancy that he had done this, and Nancy had asked him why. Mm-hmm. And what Nancy was explaining to me is that she was really concerned that he wasn't really sure. And so I turned to Jim and I said, Jim, have you kind of thought that through? Since Nancy asked, have you kind of thought through why you decided, what gave you that gut feeling that you should move? He said, no. He said, I just felt it. I just feel that, something's coming. Prices of stocks and companies are at an all-time high. I'm not real sure what is up Trump's sleeve. And so decided to go very conservative. And then we started to walk through what the consequences of that are. Mm-hmm. Consequences of reducing risk, which is going to reduce rate of return. Often that means being in jeopardy of running out of money, having a lack of funding for the lifestyle that you've intended to have, the ability to fund those long-term care health expenses. What if you have a longer lifetime than you expected? That's called longevity risk. There's a lot of risk in moving your portfolio into conservative position when you didn't have that planned out ahead of time. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that you're being methodical about how you handle that. But in the end result, in working with Jim and Nancy, they had decided to go ahead and have a portfolio x-ray done with us. And that's where we went through and kind of looked at how they were allocated, looked at their risk tolerance, and really were able to talk through and help them figure out how to structure risk so that it doesn't affect their lifestyle. That was a big help for Nancy.
Okay, well, if we've got a listener right now, they're approaching retirement, they're wondering whether they're taking on too much risk or maybe they're taking on too little risk, Sean, where should they start? What should they be doing this week?
They should give us a call. 100% they should give us a call and come in and have a discussion because we can walk through that. Imagine if you are feeling like you're not sure. Imagine if you're feeling like, I'm not sure about the markets. How should I be allocated? look, there is a pragmatic way to walk through that and determine how you should be invested based on what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish, and we can do that. And you will find that you're in such a better position, the way you feel, the way you live, the way that you're confident in spending money, understanding exactly what your situation is. So we're going to walk through that. Just give us a call. Our team is standing by. They're going to find a convenient time for us to get together. That phone number is 559-847-0039.
One more time for you. It's 559-847-0039. If you are approaching retirement and wondering whether you're taking too much risk or maybe not enough, now is the perfect time to get a second opinion. So if you've got $500,000 or more saved for retirement, go ahead, give us a call. Let's get your conversation started when you claim your spot for your very own Mason Street Retirement Blueprint directly with Sean. 559-847-0039 or online at masonstreetretirementinsights.com. Sean, I feel like that conversation is a great reminder that retirement planning, it's often about managing trade-offs. If you're avoiding one risk, you may unintentionally create another. And I think that same thing can happen when people think about Social Security, because there are a lot of headlines out there, there are a lot of opinions, and there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen next, rightfully so, because as of now, Congress continues kicking that Social Security can down the road. The deadline to fix the program's trust fund is in 2032. And that's one reason why President Trump says he is seriously looking at a pension system like Australia has. So they require employers to contribute about 12% of workers' pay into private accounts. Participation's mandatory, and Australia taxes retirement contributions every year at 15%. We know here in the U.S., 401k money is tax deferred. So, Sean, regardless of what Congress eventually decides when it comes to Social Security, most people have to still plan for retirement with the rules that we have in place today. So I'm wondering, what are the biggest things that somebody can be doing right now to improve their retirement outlook? I know that's kind of a loaded question, but I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, and you, in the beginning, you made a really good point, Casey, that one part of it's always affecting another. I like to kind of paint that picture of this retirement being a puzzle.
Yeah.
And one piece of the puzzle is always affecting another piece of the puzzle. So important to grasp onto. And I commend this administration for trying to do something, right? I mean, administrations in the past have done not too much. They've kicked the can down the road, like you said. So at least they're trying something. You know, they brought in the Trump accounts, and now they're looking at additional measures like this. Media outlets have, put out some misinformation on this. So it's kind of important to, if you're going to have an opinion on it, to get the facts. But we'll see what happens. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of unanswered questions. You mentioned that, it's mandatory participation. That's called superannuation. That's the part of that Australian system that is mandating that 12%. Big question is going to be who's going to pay for it, because if they're going to mandate employers pay for it, that is either going to interrupt the salary ability of the employee, or it's going to interrupt costs to the consumer. So one way or another, that cost will be passed on to somebody other than the company. It's all about profitability. I do love the part that it's transportable between jobs and that the employee retains it at retirement. I think that's a great aspect. But, Casey, you alluded to that, we've got to be planning retirement now based on today's laws. Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge, because current laws, they can change. One of the biggest risks that people have in planning retirement is legislative risk. What can change? And we talk a lot about that. If you have a lot of your retirement savings in a pre-tax account and you have pensions or Social Security or both, what happens if they increase taxes? And so I think that it's really important to be intentional about testing and understanding what happens when there's legislative changes. because it's tough to plan for.
Well, Sean, all this conversation about this pension system like Australia has stems from the uncertainty around Social Security. And I'm wondering why. I mean, I feel like we've been talking about Social Security for years because we have. Why do you think Social Security seems to be such a recurring topic in Washington without a long-term solution ever being reached?
Oh, it's a political nightmare, right? I mean, one way or another, somebody's going to get slammed for even bringing it up. And so it's really tough, and the math of it is very difficult. I love the current administration's kind of perspective that if you eliminate fraud and grow the economy, we're going to be a lot better off. Most economists suggest that that's not going to be enough. A lot of economists think that it's going to take both that and some increasing taxes, and it's not a good platform to run on increased taxes.
Regardless of what happens, I think what's hard for a lot of people getting close to retirement, maybe they're already retired, what's hard to grasp and accept, I think, is that this is completely out of our control. It's in Washington's hands. So I'm wondering if you've seen with your clients that if they spend all this time worrying about things outside of their control, they end up actually neglecting the things that are in front of them that they can control when it comes to their retirement plan.
What a great point that is, Casey, and that's absolutely what happens, and it's probably human nature. I mean, we're probably all guilty of it, but when it comes to retirement, it's a serious issue. Identify, like you said, identify those things that you control, that you can control, and then plan for those things that you cannot. Identify those areas that may come up that you can't control, understand what the consequences are, and determine if you need to implement some strategy to mitigate those consequences. But, get started. I encourage people to get started. Identify what your expenses are going to be. Understand what those are and break them down to the necessities. Compartmentalize the lifestyle, hobbies, going out to dinner, the golf, the weekend trips once a month or once a quarter. That all creates lifestyle, and also create that bucket list and try and get an idea what you're looking for and what the costs are going to be. It's going to be really important to try and identify the available income that you're going to be able to generate from the resources that you've accumulated. So many of us, we start thinking about how much do I need to have saved up to retire? And yeah, that's important, but it's the income that you generate from those resources that's really going to be important. And depending on who you are and your risk tolerance, you're going to want to understand the difference between guaranteed income and non-guaranteed income. Some of us have pensions, not all of us, but some of us, and most of us have Social Security, which in this discussion, we're questioning whether that's going to be guaranteed or not.
Right.
But understanding those guarantees and then recognizing, who we are and what our risk tolerance is and how much of our income do we want guaranteed. That's a really pivotal type of a element to make sure and come to grips with. Understanding that spendable income is really all that matters. So taxes are the biggest erosion factor of those spendable dollars. So really taking in consideration how you're going to mitigate taxes. I always try and encourage people to focus on tax diversification. There's different types of money from a tax perspective, tax-free money, long-term capital gains money. There's your pre-tax dollars that are going to be taxed as ordinary income. So understand tax diversification. That can really help mitigate taxes in the long run. And then investment strategy is going to be key. Understanding that, there is a risk-reward ratio. We are all taking risk in the market, some of us more, some of us less, but we all deserve a certain rate of return based on the risk that we're taking, and we got to make sure that that's happening correctly, because if it's not, on this roller coaster that we call the market that we all sign up for, understanding that it's going to go up and down, we don't want to be capturing more of the downside and less of the upside. So that we got to get clarity on that all of that is working out right.
Let me ask you this, Sean. If somebody's listening, they're feeling overwhelmed by all these headlines that we're talking about, all this uncertainty that's out there, where should they begin? What should they do to try to get a grasp on things?
Yeah, start working through those things that I just mentioned. And, a lot of times that becomes really difficult. It's not easy. You're listening to all of the information out there. You're listening to all the noise. You're trying to figure out what is right and what is wrong. You're trying to figure out what is relevant to your own situation. A lot of times you got to have discussions with somebody that knows what they're doing. Start with your spouse, start with your family. That's a good place to get started. But eventually, if you can't get that clarity and that clear understanding, get with somebody that knows what they're doing. We want you to come in here. We invite you to come in here and just kind of walk through it. We're going to talk about taxes. We're going to talk about income strategies. What are the mechanics? Once you give up the paycheck, how does the money get from your investment accounts into your checking account? I get asked that every day, and there's different strategies to it. Your estate planning, a lot of us, we have this underlying feeling that if our stuff isn't organized, if we're going to put our kids in a position to where they're going to have a burden when we pass away, that doesn't feel good. So getting that legacy and estate planning in order is going to be really important. And then, really understanding life is going to throw us curveballs. There's just no question about it. We're going to have potholes. We're going to have hurdles. We're going to have challenges that come up. And we've got to make sure that those are not going to derail our retirement. They're not going to be in place to reduce our lifestyle. So going through and understanding what the consequences of those things are, and then being intentional about whether or not we need to implement some type of mitigation strategy for them is going to be key. We're going to walk through all that stuff. And you'll walk out of that meeting feeling like at least you're moving in the right direction and getting clarity. So, I really encourage you, give us a call, set up a time to come in, and we'll just walk it through.
That number to do so, 559-847-0039. The people who tend to have the most confidence in retirement are the ones who have a plan in place that can adapt as things change around us. And that's exactly what Sean is helping people create in his office every single day. And it can all start for you too. When you pick up the phone right now, you give us a call, you claim your spot for your very own Mason Street Retirement Blueprint. 559-847-0039. When you dial that number, that will connect you with one of our Mason Street teammates who are standing by right now, ready to take your call and find you that next convenient time on the calendar to meet directly with Sean. 559-847-0039. We want to remind you again, too, this is completely complimentary. No obligation is attached to this opportunity. No judgment. This is a safe space where you can meet with a professional who's got decades of experience. Sean's been helping your neighbors here in Fresno retire with confidence for years, and he wants to do the same thing for you if you have $500,000 or more saved for retirement. All you got to do, you got to make the call, 559-847-0039, or you head online to masonstreetretirementinsights.com. You click the contact button, share some info with us, and we will reach out directly to you. All right, let's dive in, Sean, because I mentioned I want to talk today about managing taxes. And it's because I saw an article this week I wanted to talk to you about. It had the headline, I'm 80 and my RMD is $300,000. What the heck am I supposed to do about my huge tax bill? Now, this is another example of what can happen if you're very successful with your 401k and your IRAs. The person that wrote this article has just over $6 million in an IRA. But Sean, isn't this why we talk about an IRA to Roth conversion? Can you talk to us about this scenario and what your thoughts are on it, what your opinion is?
Yeah, it really is. That, most of us don't understand what the effect of and the consequences of RMDs or required minimum distribution. RMDs are when the government decides that they want their money. You partnered with the government, when you decided to start funding your 401k, your
Yeah.
IRA, your pre-tax accounts, you owed taxes on those dollars, but they allowed you to put their portion into your account. So you really built that account with your partner, the government, and eventually they want their share. The only way for them to get their share is for you to start pulling money out of those accounts and pay taxes on them. So they're going to force you to do that. Some of us, it's going to be age 73. Others, it's going to be age 75. Just depends on the birthday, but you got to really plan for this. You know, Casey, that our goal is really to control tax brackets. When it comes to tax strategy, all we're trying to do is control our tax brackets with what we have available to us. And once RMDs, or required minimum distributions, start kicking in, we all of a sudden have a loss of control. So we've got to plan that out.
So for listeners who may not know, Sean, can you explain exactly why RMDs become such a tax issue later on in retirement?
Yeah, because imagine that you've been pulling out of your account the right amount. You've been pulling out of your IRA the right amount when you're trying to supplement your Social Security. Maybe you've got some rental income. Maybe you have a pension or a small pension. You've got dividends. And in tax planning, we want to understand how much we should be pulling out of that IRA. And all of a sudden, you turn 73 or you turn 75 years old, and now you're required to take a specific amount out. Those RMDs actually cause a tax chain of events. And so all of a sudden, you're forced to take more money out of that account than you had planned on. You know, Social Security taxes are dependent on your income. And when you pull more money than you expected out of your IRA, all of a sudden your income goes up, which means that there's a high potential that more of your Social Security is going to get taxed. You also recognize that your Medicare premiums are dependent on your income. And so when RMDs kick in, now all of a sudden your income goes up. Now all of a sudden, maybe more of your Social Security ends up on the tax return, which again increases your income. That can start to now put you into the higher tiers, and now Medicare premiums go up.
So I'm wondering how you determine when you're meeting with a client how much somebody should convert without creating a new tax problem for them. Are there certain years for somebody where Roth conversions tend to make more sense than others, or is there a certain client where a Roth conversion makes more sense than a different client?
Yeah, so often when I'm having the tax discussion, and by the way, I'm having this discussion with tax professionals, CPAs. Not necessarily are CPAs always recognizing the big picture. I urge people to be careful about relying solely on their tax professional to determine Roth conversions, because often our tax professional is really highly focused on saving us as many dollars this year as possible in taxes. And, you know, when I ask people what's most important to you, it's how many dollars I can save in taxes over my lifetime is what's really most important. So be careful there. But it comes down to planning. You know, so many people think about the consequences of a Roth conversion. We love the idea of tax-free money down the road. We love that. But people get hyper-focused on the consequences of Roth conversions. So how much am I going to have to pay in taxes on that conversion? You know, obviously, if we're going to give up money early that we weren't planning on in the form of taxation because we did a Roth conversion, our account value is going to go down. People don't like the feeling of that. People don't like the feeling of getting pushed up into a higher tax bracket. So often people start utilizing what they think is common sense and actually makes sense, but not always does the math work out. I'm going to convert as much as I can up to my next tax bracket. Yeah, that's a strategy, but that might not be your best strategy. Start to focus on what the benefits are. It's very rare that I talk to anybody about Roth conversions and they've figured out what the benefits are. Isn't the whole reason why you're even thinking about a Roth conversion is to put you in the best possible position? Well, how do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Look, this thing's a puzzle, and you've got multiple pieces to the puzzle, and each piece of the puzzle is affecting other pieces. You've got to take your whole situation holistically, and you've got to do the calculations specifically, the Roth calculations based on your whole holistic picture.
It's a great way to look at it, Sean. I want to remind you guys of our phone number, 559-847-0039. So the person that is writing this article, they're 80 years old, and obviously they waited until they're 80 to try and figure out this problem. My question is, has the train already left the station for this guy? Is there still hope? Is there still something he could do at this point? Or, in a perfect world, when would you have met with this person for the first time, Sean? What could you have done for them had they come to you sooner than 80 years old?
Yeah, that's such a great question because, again, that falls into what we were just talking about, common sense. So many people come to me and they say, I'm too old for Roth conversions. Well, I'm going to suggest you're not. And I'm going to give you a couple reasons why. First of all, until you can really understand what the benefit is, it doesn't make any sense to just come up with that maybe excuse or concept that we're too old because you don't really know. We are working right now with a lady. She's the neatest lady. Her name is Karen. She is 82 years old. Okay. And we typically would not be considering Roth conversions for the benefit of her lifetime.
Yeah.
But so important to recognize what happens with money from a tax perspective when you pass it on to the people that you care about. Mm-hmm. Look, if I accumulated this money, I don't care who's going to have it. I want as little to go to the government as possible, regardless of who has it and who's giving it to them. And so I'm going to take that in consideration. When you pass an IRA, pre-tax money, to the kids or to the heirs, they're going to be forced to take those dollars out over a 10-year period. They can typically take that out in whatever variation through the 10 years they want. They could take it all out in the first year. Through the years, they're typically not going to take it all out in 1 year because they're going to get crushed on taxes,
right,
reaching those higher tax brackets. So they're probably going to systematically take those dollars out through the 10 years. And keep in mind, and I'm generally speaking, but if you think about how old our kids are when we pass away, they're typically in their highest earning years, high 50s, early 60s, and they're making the highest salaries they have ever made.
Yeah.
Those salaries are taking up those lower tax brackets, and then our money that they're being forced to take out of the IRA, the inherited IRA, is falling into those higher tax brackets. And we're typically seeing 45%, maybe even 50% going to the government of those dollars that we accumulated. We didn't sign up for that. Mm-hmm. When you pass a Roth, yeah, they're still forced to take those dollars out over 10 years, but they can take those dollars out in the 10th year. They don't have to worry about the tax implications. So just think about that. They inherit your dollars, and they can leave those in the Roth for another 10 years to grow tax-free. That's very powerful. At 7% interest, it's going to double, and that's doubling it tax-free. So we're working with Karen right now, and she is 83 years old. And of course, we would not be strategizing to convert for her own lifetime, but we have her heirs in mind, and we have recognized that if we use her tax brackets right now, she's on Social Security, she doesn't have any other income, we can convert that IRA money right now so that when she passes it, her heirs are going to get that money completely tax-free and allow it to, again, grow for another 10 years in that Roth. So it's never about age. Keep in mind, what is the value of a Roth? The value of a Roth is tax-free growth. What do you need for growth? You need time and you need rate of return. So be careful of thinking about common sense. Start getting to the math, start and get to the calculations, and understand that you got to take your whole holistic picture into consideration when you're doing those calculations.
Absolutely. Okay, so if we've got someone listening, Sean, they've got a large 401k or an IRA, maybe they've got both, and they think this might eventually become a problem for them. What do they need to do? What steps should they be taking?
Yeah, I'm going to highly suggest that you get with somebody who knows what they're doing. You should give us a call, come in and have a discussion, and we're going to walk through that. We're going to walk through what the implications are of RMDs eventually getting into your financial world. We're going to walk through what the consequences of losing control of those tax brackets might be for you specifically. Give us a call and let's just walk through it. Team is standing by. We're going to walk through all these different elements, your income strategies, your tax strategies, your risks, your legacy desires, all of the lifestyle that you want to live and how your resources are going to help fund it. We're going to walk through all that stuff. So give us a call. Phone number is 559-847-0039. Our team is standing by, so give us a call right now.
Your Mason Street Retirement Blueprint is waiting, 559-847-0039. If you've done a great job saving for retirement, do not let taxes undo that hard work. A tax-efficient retirement strategy could really help you keep more of what you've earned in your pocket at the end of the day, and it's all going to start with your very own Mason Street Retirement Blueprint. So give us a call right now. Let's get a time on the calendar for you to meet with Sean. Let's see if you have some opportunities available before those RMDs start kicking in for you. 559-847-0039 or head online to masonstreetretirementinsights.com. Earlier this week, a friend of mine sent me an Instagram post that talked about various fears or phobias. One of them was called Plutophobia, which is the fear of money. So, of course, I went down the rabbit hole and I read that this can manifest during retirement in the fear of spending your savings. And what's one way to overcome that? Well, this article talked about one tool that helps increase certainty. So what do you think they're talking about here, Sean?
Well, and it's a real thing, Plutophobia. We don't run into it often because people that suffer from it typically have trouble accumulating wealth throughout their life, but it has come up a few times with people, especially who had recently inherited significant amounts of money. But that fear of running out plagues so many of us, maybe not to the level of Plutophobia, but it certainly interferes with lifestyle and quality of life. And often this affects a spouse who wants to live their greatest life, but are being held back by their spouse's concerns of running out of money and not having enough. The good news is there's a fix. You've heard me say so many times, going through our comprehensive planning process, it helps people see the reality of their situation, and then it exposes them to income strategies that can completely remove those fears and concerns of running out early. It really boils down to the income strategy that'll be the best fit. We've been told for years that we're financially prudent if we take 4% a year out of our accounts that are invested in the market and that will never run out of money. There's a lot of risk. That may or may not work. You're hoping the market performs to suit that strategy. It relies heavily on what's called sequence of returns, hoping the market delivers positive returns in the earlier years of retirement. Most of us want more certainty that our money will last. And there are income structures guaranteed and insured by A-rated insurance companies with multiple layers of protections. So some families might want to guarantee income to maybe cover their core expenses and then rely on the market for lifestyle desires. Some want to guarantee both and then use the market to grow the rest of their money long-term for healthcare expenses and eventually legacy. I've found that when families have the right balance between guarantees and taking risk in the market, they feel more secure to spend and live that lifestyle that we're hoping for. We can design and tailor an income plan to suit a family's needs and lifestyle desires. Risk tolerance, flexibility, short-term versus long-term spending, taxation, these are all aspects we need to consider in that income plan design.
Yeah, I mean, it's always inspiring to me to hear how someone finds that confidence to enjoy their retirement that they've worked so hard for. And sometimes it really just takes that one moment or that one strategy to help them break through those worries. So have you ever seen a client make that leap, Sean, moving past the fear of spending in retirement and what, made the difference for them?
Yeah, Casey, that aspect you bring up of fear of spending, it's just no way to live your best life. And we deserve to have both lifestyle and security. And we can. Jared came into our office. He wanted to come in separate from his wife, Carrie, for the first visit. We don't usually do that, but he really talked about the need. And he explained that Carrie was having a hard time being confident that they could buy the cabin at the lake, which they had dreamed of for years, but then still continue that same lifestyle they were accustomed to. And they had some bucket list items that were really important to both of them. When Carrie came into the next meeting, I asked her to tell me what was important to her. Through that discussion, we identified that the issue was having to rely on the market. She said they lost over 30% of their savings in 2008, and she just knew that could happen again. So we created a net worth and cash flow analysis based on their current situation, and we tested how they would be affected in the event of a severe market correction. And I'll tell you, she was right. It would significantly alter their lifestyle and put them in jeopardy of funding future healthcare needs. So using specific investment and tax strategies, we were able to design an income plan that guaranteed the income they would need to cover the cabin expenses. It gave them the money they would need to check off those bucket list items over the next 10 years of retirement, and then ensure they would continue the same lifestyle they were accustomed to. They were both comfortable with relying on the market to fund those long-term expenses like long-term health care, and they figured the cabin would be the safety net in case they live longer than they planned for, or be the legacy to the kids along with their residents. Jared just emailed me letting me know they found the perfect cabin and put an offer in. I got to tell you, Casey, it's just so fun to see them so excited.
Oh, that's amazing. You love to hear it. I mean, that fear, it's true. It can keep you from enjoying the very retirement that you worked decades to build. And that's exactly what we do not want to happen. So if you're wondering whether you're being too conservative with your spending, or if you just want to know what is safe to spend without jeopardizing your future, Sean is here. He is eager to help. So give us a call. 559-847-0039 is that number for you. Claim a spot on Sean's calendar. Get that complimentary introductory retirement planning assessment that he's offering you. You guys can walk through your income sources. You can walk through what your goals are. And then together you can work to build a plan that's going to work for you and give you that confidence that you've been looking for. Our number for you again, 559-847-0039. One more time so you can write it down, 559-847-0039. Or you can always visit us online. We are at MasonStreetRetirementInsights.com. Okay, Sean, so we've talked about people reaching retirement with a tax problem that maybe they didn't expect. But for some folks approaching retirement, their concern is not taxes. It's whether their career path might change before they're actually ready to retire. And that's becoming a really big conversation right now in this age of AI that I want to talk about. So let's think about it. I mean, before technology came along and took over certain jobs, somebody had to do them. So we used to have milk delivered by the milkman. He went door to door. We used to have some person light the street lamps by hand at night. We used to have telephone operators manually connecting calls. That one's actually really crazy for me to think about. But, eventually, Sean, technology came along. It made all of those jobs I just mentioned completely obsolete. And now artificial intelligence, it's raising a similar question for a lot of workers who are approaching retirement age. So Boston College's Center for Retirement Research did a new analysis that found that older workers in jobs with greater exposure to AI have become somewhat more likely to leave the workforce since the rise of AI tools like ChatGPT. So I bring this up because I wanted to ask you, if you have somebody who's in their late 50s or their early 60s and they're worried, Sean, that technology could change their career plans, could lead them to retire earlier than they wanted to, how are you helping them make sure that their retirement remains a choice rather than a surprise or something that they're forced into?
Yeah, that's a good one. And that's actually coming up quite a bit in discussions that we're having these days. Isn't it crazy to think about technology and how far it's come?
I mean, just thinking about those jobs I just mentioned.
Yeah.
You wanted to make a call. It connected you with an operator who then moved some plugs around a switchboard and connected you with who you want to talk to. Crazy.
For real. It's really unbelievable. But if you think about it, this has happened multiple times through history. The Industrial Revolution, everybody thought everybody was doomed. And then what happened? Mm-hmm. Everybody just figured it out. I am, I don't know, about 150 miles south of the Silicon Valley, mm-hmm. which is the heart of computer programming. And so I'm having these discussions quite a bit. People are worried that AI is going to kind of move them out of their career, out of the workplace. And so we're having these discussions. My kind of encouragement, my focus to help people that are concerned about this is to really start to figure out where you would be left. How would it affect you if you had to retire early? That's the key. Look, if it happens that you are having to make a career change, but you don't know, if you don't know how that's going to affect you financially, that's where the problem lies. We've got to know how that's going to affect you financially so that you can determine what your options are. You may be in a position to where you have to, because of your retirement desires, you might have to go figure out another career that is going to provide that same type of income that you're used to. That might be the case, but what if it's not? What if you don't actually have to have that same income? You maybe want to keep working, but you don't need that same income. Wow, that opens up the options significantly. And the way to do that is to have an actual financial plan done so that you can really understand where you are financially if you have to retire 2, 3, 5 years early.
Are you having clients come see you who they're concerned about technology and they're bringing that to your meeting? So maybe, their company is bringing or moving to a new software or bringing in a new type of tool and they're not interested in learning it. Are they bringing that concern to you? And then also I'm wondering if you're finding that people kind of underestimate their ability to adapt to these changes. They're moving us to cloud-based software. I can't learn it. I got to retire. Can I do it, Sean? In reality, it's probably not going to be that hard for them to adapt to, but they're just underestimating their ability.
Well, that goes back to what we were talking about before, where this has happened before and people adapted, right? The other thing with technology is it's making learning easier also. So maybe we're not factoring that in. I agree with you. I think that people are more resilient sometimes than they give themselves credit for. And yes, we are having those discussions. I was just meeting with Jim a couple weeks ago. He's a computer programmer. He's going to retire. We've been working with him for 5 or 6 years. He's planning on retiring in about 3 years. And so we just started looking through his plan and started creating scenarios and figuring out, what if he has to retire earlier? He's going to be fine. There's no problem there, but he doesn't want to retire. He wants to keep working. He loves what he does. And so he's really been researching to try and figure out if AI keeps moving at the speed that it is, he's probably going to have to make some adjustments. So he's really been doing a lot of research to try and figure that out.
So would you say that people getting close to retirement, kind of like Jim, you were just talking about, he's planning to retire in 3 years. Should people approaching retirement be building more flexibility into that retirement timeline? What if something happens? Maybe what if Jim's company goes through a reorg next year? Should he be building that flexibility into his plan now so that he's ready to pivot should something like that happen?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's even beyond the situation that we're talking about because we've been talking about and planning for those types of situations for years. What if somebody becomes disabled, right? There's a huge consequence to retirement when somebody has to move from working years to retirement years, even 2 or 3 years early. Something significant happens when we retire. We stop contributing to our accounts and we start using our accounts.
Yeah.
And that is a major, major effect on the financial plan. So definitely adding some flexibility in, yes, but you got to understand what those options are, and you got to know what the effects are. And having a comprehensive financial plan done so that you can really understand what that looks like is going to be key.
Yeah, that shift from accumulation to distribution is a really big mindset shift as well that you have to be prepared for. So, Sean, if somebody is feeling anxious after hearing about these trends with AI and technology, what is something that they can do this week to regain a sense of control over their own retirement future?
Wow, what a great thing you said, gain a sense of control, right? That gaining a sense of control, that comes from a knowing. You know, through the 20 plus years that I've been working with families and building plans, there's just this feeling that comes over people when they know. When you know, hey, you might not love the picture, but when you know, there's a sense that you get that is unlike that feeling of uncertainty. I believe that you should have a comprehensive financial plan done. We'd love to work with you to do it. We want you to have our Mason Street retirement blueprint. We know how that's going to change the way that you feel and your outlook, and it's going to put you in a position to where you can start to understand your options and then determine which direction to go.
That number to do it, it's 559-847-0039. If you are in your late 50s or 60s, or maybe you're already retired, there's a lot that you cannot control, but what you can control is having a plan, and that is what Sean and his team at Mason Street Wealth Management are helping people do in their office every single day. So 559-847-0039 is what you need to dial if you've got $500,000 or more saved for retirement and you'd like to have a conversation about your retirement income and your savings and whether you are truly prepared for whatever may come next. 559-847-0039. Dial that number and we will get you scheduled for your very own Mason Street retirement blueprint directly with Sean. He will help you take a closer look at where you stand and what opportunities may be available to help you retire with confidence. So one more time, it's all going to start for you when you pick up the phone and dial 559-847-0039, or when you head online and visit us at masonstreetretirementinsights.com. And that's going to do it for us this week here on the show. But Sean and I will be back next week, same time, same place, with more retirement insight for Fresno. But until then, Sean, handing it back over to you. Any final thoughts today?
Yeah, actually, I want to remind everybody to go to our website, Mason Street Retirement Insights, and look up educational workshops that we're putting on. Several of them each quarter. Most of them we host through Fresno State University, but we bring out some really incredible topics, some topics that are going to give you some significant insight and things to think about. You know, I'll also tell you, a lot of people will come to those classes to kind of get to know me, kind of maybe even interview me. Don't think that is an extraordinary strategy. Go into workshops, go into classes to try and get to know advisors, a really good idea. So go to Mason Street Retirement Insights. You'll get the schedule of those classes, and I really encourage you to take advantage of those. We care about your success, and we are going to continue week after week after week. We're going to continue to bring you the information that is going to help put you in a better position. I love that you guys tune in, so we'll see you next week.
Mason Street Wealth Management, MSWM, is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by MSWM on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Motivate Investments. Registration is not an endorsement by securities regulators. Investment advisory services are offered through Motivate Investments, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. The information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities. Offered through Sean A. Mason, California, insurance license number 0B54860. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by Motivate Investments. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. MSWM is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if MSWM is licensed in your state, please call 559-892-0002.